Hey everyone, what's going on? So, in the past few days, we've got this story in the mainstream media about this missing Iowa girl who supposedly went jogging and then turned up missing and they haven't found her. And they're trying to use her Fitbit, the information from that, to locate where she might possibly be. And what's so interesting about this story is it really does truly prove my point of what I've talked about so many times about how these mainstream media stories are put in front of us for a certain reason and they're all by a certain code. Right now, if I go to Facebook, there are people posting tons and tons of stuff about how there are just tons of missing people in Iowa right now. There's lots and lots. Thought there was like 70 some people missing just in the last month. I thought that's what it said, in the month of July. And people are all worried about it around here, talking about they need to watch their kids and this or that because there's all of these missing people. So if there's all these missing people in Iowa, why is this story the only one that is on CNN and the only one that is a mainstream media story, really? I haven't seen any other mainstream stories about all of these missing people in Iowa, but we got this story about this girl and her Fitbit for a specific reason. They chose this story, and a lot of it points to Freemasonry. The people who are high up in Freemasonry are the people who understand this knowledge of Kabbalah and coding numbers into words and how to manipulate this world that we live in, and they're using it to essentially play God over us. And I'll just show you what I mean here. And if you're new to this channel, check out some links in the description. But Gematria is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. And literally, our mainstream media is always scripted this way. Our sports leagues are scripted this way. Our told history is scripted this way. Well, let's look at a quick example, Well, we'll look at an Iowa one. Niall Kinnick, he supposedly died on 6/2 at the age of 24, and he wore the number 24 when he played for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Notice Iowa equals 24, and he wore the number 24, and Iowa Hawkeyes equal 62. And he supposedly died on 6/2, and he was 24 years old, and he wore number 24. That's why, Iowa's the 29th state. That's why Herbert Hoover, the only president from Iowa, became president in 1929. And then we had the stock market crash later that year on the 29th day of October. There's Interstate 29 that goes through Iowa. Kinnick Stadium, where the Iowa Hawkeyes play football, that was opened in the year 1929. It's all by this code. It is all put together this way. So, right off the bat, if you go to this girl's Twitter, the first thing that pops up on this girl's Twitter is a pinned tweet about how she got followed by a cop off the bus because they thought she was a missing person back on November 14th. I mean, really, just think about it. The last thing or the first thing that you see when you go to her Twitter is a post about how a cop thought that she was a missing 10-year-old girl on November 14th, and then now she is a missing person. It's like, what planet are we living on? We got 9/11 stuff, and then the next president we get is Barack Hussein Obama, and people don't think anything of it, or people do, but it's just ridiculous. Or my favorite is the guy in the uh, John Bobbitt story. The lead detective was named Peter Wentz, and she threw his penis out the window, and nobody knew where his Peter went. Right now, we got a gay college football player named Mike King Johnson. Think about that. Mike King Johnson. Michael Sam went to the Rams, of all teams. The Rams, the gay football player, goes to the Rams. Matt Harvey, the first pitcher to pitch in Houston after Hurricane Harvey. It's all synced up to the Astros winning the Super Bowl and the flood stuff. The Dolphins Lions coach gets busted for doing lines. The guy who founded Ragbri that I just documented about, he dies on the 46th anniversary of Ragbri beginning. Like, oh, the odds, So anyway, I looked up this girl. November 14th is an interesting day in itself because it stems back to Freemasonry. November 14th is the day that leaves 47 days in the year. And if you look up Freemasonry, you'll see the Freemason square and compass that is set to 47 degrees. And one of the big things they love is Euclid's 47th problem about the foundation of a perfect square. The word foundation equals 47 in Gematria. Also, White House, President, Government, Republican, Democrat, DC, all of them things equal 47. The word time equals 47. And, a lot of this stems back to time. Each leg on that compass is 23.5 degrees, just like the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, from the equator. So it's all about time and this code that we live in, We live in this code that is understood by high-ranking Freemasons and people who have been ruling over us, the people who also control the media. They understand this ancient knowledge. If you go from November 14th to this girl's birthday, her birthday is May 8th, which is interesting in itself because if you write out the word Freemasonry, it equals 58, and her birthday 5/8. Notice it's also 524 in Satanic Gematria. If you go from November 14th to her birthday, this cop thought that she was a missing person on November 14th, it was 5 months and 24 days before her birthday. Just think about that. Freemasonry, her birthday is 5/8. The word Freemasonry equals both of these things. The word police equals 147. The word Freemason equals 147. Think about it. The fraternal order of the police. The police are really just, keeping us enslaved in this world. There's a lot of good police officers, but I don't think they realize what they're actually doing, They're just, being used to keep this world enslaved while other people can just rule over us. If you go from her birthday to the day that she went missing, it's 2 months and 11 days. 211 is the 47th prime number, right? It's just like, that's why George Washington's supposed birthday, 211, February 11th. George Washington, a 33rd degree Freemason. Washington, D.C., named after him. She also went missing exactly 42 weeks before her next birthday, which is interesting because just the word Freemason equals 42, and the big G on top of the square and compass, it also represents the number 42. So it represents a 7, but in Sumerian Gematria, it also represents, or in Francis Bacon Gematria, it equals a 42. And Francis Bacon, a big piece into the King James Bible, the Freemasonic Bible, the guy who helped write it. The word Freemason 42, Fitbit equals 42. That's how they say they're going to find her. Iowa woman, the way they kept calling her in all the articles, equals 42. She went jogging equals 42. And her initials even, M is 13, the 13th letter, it breaks down to 4. 1 plus 3 is 4. T is the 20th letter, it breaks down to 2. 2 plus 0 is 2. So her initials are even a lot like a 42. The date that she went missing too, 18/7, that's another number synced up to Freemasonry. Ancient accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry equals 187. Washington, D.C. equals 187. George Washington equals 187. Talked about the Jesuits, who are called the Society of Jesus. They equal 187. They're intertwined. It's just another group that is intertwined with the Freemasons. There's 187 chapters in the Torah, which a lot of, what they are using in the knowledge, it goes back to the Torah, Kabbalah, think about the Jews. So like I'm saying, everything about the story, it's synced up to Freemasonry. And There's also got to be some type of riddle with the Iowa Hawkeyes, because they keep putting all the stuff how she was a University of Iowa student, and there's a bunch of pictures with her at the Iowa game and whatnot. And they mention Iowa Hawkeyes a lot, or University of Iowa. And the story got popular on July 25th, which the date can be written 25/7. 257 is the 55th prime number, and this girl's name just so happens to equal 55, just like Iowa Hawkeyes equal 55. So her boyfriend, whose house she was at before she went missing, his name equals 62. Those Iowa Hawkeyes also equal 62. Think about their coach right now, who's 62 years old, Kirk Ferentz. His name equals 62 at Gematria. The basketball coach is Fran McCaffrey. His name equals 119 in Gematria. I can spell it right here. 119. Look at the word Hawkeyes. 119. We got that story earlier this year about the Jordan Bohannon guy who purposely missed his 34th free throw so he could stay tied with the basketball player named Chris Streets, right? And then he died by a snowplow. Chris Streets died by a snowplow. Oh, I spelled it wrong here. Snowplow. That equals 34 in Gematria, just like Hawkeyes. And think about it. The record was 34 free throws, and Jordan Bohannon stayed on 34 free throws. And Chris Street died on January 19th, just like Hawkeyes equals 119. It's all by this code. So it's ridiculous. Jordan Bohannon, I think his name equaled something. 145, just like Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa Hawkeyes 145. That's why we got that story in the mainstream media, because it was all synced up by the numbers. Many more examples, Hayden Fry equals, I think, 38, just like Hawkeyes in reverse. Another reason that this story is so significant, I think, is because of the town that she's from. She was from Brooklyn, Iowa, and Brooklyn is known as the community of flags. And I guess there's a big flag display in this town of all 50 states and whatnot. And that has just been a humongous theme this year that I documented all year in 2017. I talked about the players kneeling during the national anthem, how it was synced up to Charles Manson and his helter-skelter theory. And then he died in November after I talked about it for all of October. I talked about how it's synced up to Charles Manson. Then Charles Manson dies. And then it was synced up to the Eagles, and the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl. And it was also synced up to the 88th anniversary of the stock market crash. And Herbert Hoover, the president from Iowa, was the first president. He was the president to sign the Star-Spangled Banner into Congress as the official national anthem. And this is 88 years after the stock market crash. Trump equals 88 in Gematria. Think about Herbert Hoover. H is the 8th letter. A lot like in 88, the word kneel equals 88. U.S. Bank Stadium was where the Super Bowl was. That equals 88 in Gematria. Colin Kaepernick equals 88. The Star-Spangled Banner equals 88. It's all about this, right? And that's why I think that they chose this town and this girl, because it's the community of flags, a very important thing. Donald Trump's birthday is even on Flag Day, of all days, Flag Day. But University of Iowa equals the same as national anthem. And we got this town, Brooklyn. Roseanne was all about her singing the terrible national anthem. And that's why they canceled her show after the 231st episode, right? And now they're bringing back that next show 147 days after that final episode. And the Frontwards Way national anthem equals 147, just like Freemason. Also on this town's Facebook page, they stylized the Brooklyn, which reminds you a lot of the Brooklyn Dodgers, right? And I've been talking a whole lot about the Cubs recently by following mainstream media events and other synchronicity things that are going on. And in 2016, when I predicted the Cubs and the Indians to play in the World Series, It was all about Iowa symbolism. Tons and tons of Iowa stuff that was going on with it. So even the Iowa Cubs, right? Right across the street from where I worked, it's called the 1908 Drought Bar. And we got on November 2nd, like a lot like 112 is the 112th World Series. It's the same day the Cubs won the World Series, the 112th World Series, after it started raining and ending the drought, right? I worked at Burger King that equaled 112, and across the street was the 1908 Drought Bar. But on that day in Des Moines, Iowa, right next to where I used to live, there was a police shooting where 2 police officers died. And it was on Merle Hay Road, and Merle Hay is the first person to die during World War One, or the first American to die in World War One, which is interesting because this year is the 114th World Series, and World War equals 114 in Gematria. So does Holocaust, so does Pearl Harbor, so does Kim Jong-un. Also, the Cubs were in the 1918 World Series just before World War One came to an end. And in that World Series, that's where it got popular to stand at sporting events during the national anthem when they lost to the Boston Red Sox. They lost on 9/11. That's when they lost the World Series. Everybody knows 9/11. And the reason I bring this all up is because Chicago, Illinois equals 145, just like Iowa Hawkeyes. And this story, she went missing 1 month and 14 days before the Hawkeyes' first game on 9/1. Chicago Cubs equal 91, and Chicago, Illinois also equals 91. And remember, too, that the Cubs won the World Series again 145 years after the Great Chicago Fire. So, 145 years. Israel declared its independence on 14/5, 145 days before the World Series in 1948, the last time the Indians had won the World Series, and that David Ben-Gurion was the guy who claimed it, that declared the independence. His name equaled 145. Think about Israel in regards to World War. So, we'll end the video there. I just wanted to point it out that this story, chosen for a reason. There's so many other missing people in Iowa, yet this one is on CNN being popularized, and it's all pointing back to Freemasonry and synced up to, the Iowa Hawkeyes as well. So we'll watch for some tributes this year with the Iowa Hawkeyes. I'm sure they'll give us some clues as to what's going on with it. So have a good one. Peace.